look on live. Everybody in.
Hi, everyone. How are you? Can you hear me good? Thanks again, as always, for joining. Just going to dive into a couple updates and then hand it over to Director Bond for some additional updates. We have 2,083 confirmed cases of COVID-19 and 82 fatalities. Just a couple other quick updates. So our drop-in center at Blake Field in support of the homeless population had yesterday 21 people, and everything went quite smoothly. And Career High School currently has 6 people that are staying there. We continue to be pleased with how that site's going, and grateful to all the volunteers that are working there to help support it. Director Bond, you had some updates.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, everyone. So for nursing homes, I don't have any data to report today that is different from yesterday. However, we will be conducting and supporting through a private-public partnership testing at advanced nursing, so we can test the residents at that facility. So that will be happening later this week. And so that's an update that was different from our update from yesterday. And then also, I just wanted to inform the restaurants that are going to be opening for the May 20th phase. We will be, from the health department, reviewing the applications and processing that so that we can schedule inspections in the coming weeks. And so stay tuned for that. We are receiving applications and payments, and so we want to thank all of those establishments for their time. And you will get an appointment to get you inspected in the near future. And that concludes my update.
Thank you. And so Director Bond's point about advanced nursing, this is just part of an overall strategy that's being done to test residents at a number of the large nursing homes, all the residents. As the press will recall, Fairhaven Health did the same comprehensive test last week of all the residents at Mary Wade Home. And advanced nursing is one of the other larger sites, and we're excited to work with them. There's also some conversations with Regal about a similar action taking place soon. So we'll let you know as those things occur. Mike Pinto, do you have a food update? You had school meals update?
I do. Just to run through real quick, our total to date is 285,143 meals. We did 55,636 in March. That jumped obviously into the full month in April of 156,143. And our May to date totals are 36,087 for breakfast, 36,087 for lunch, and for a total of 74,174. And that's where we stand. Obviously, we're continuing. We're continuing our 3 days a week for now, and we're evaluating how we're going to pivot to the summer meals program as we get closer.
Thanks, Mike. That's a lot of food. I'm sure it was not easy for you, Dr. Tracy, and your team to make that happen and continue to make that happen. So
Sherry's been doing fantastic. I mean, she's been running ragged, but I give her all the credit in the world for making this happen. So
thank you. Dr. Tracy, do you have anything to add, or should I hand it over to our special guest? You're on mute, Dr. Tracy.
I would like to use this opportunity to give a shout out to frontline workers, including Gail. I've been to many of the sites and I've seen them in operation, practicing the rules from the health department and making sure that families are fed. So a lot of shout out to the food service workers and the security officers who are there to make sure things are done decently in order.
Thank you, Dr. Tracy. you're right that there's so many people that are putting themselves out there to help support the community. So I'm going to hand it over to our Congresswoman, Rosa DeLauro, who's been working tirelessly to help support so many members of the community in a lot of aspects of what, in particular, cities like New Haven are struggling with. And just wanted to say we're very, very grateful for the support that you have and your advocacy at the Capitol. And it's everything from us getting a funding from HUD to help support the homeless population, to help support some of our testing operations and our small businesses, to our hope that you'll be able to be successful in advocating with your colleagues both in the House and Senate to get more direct funding for municipalities and states across the nation who are struggling with a significant loss in revenues. We're deeply grateful for your support, and I'd like to hand it over to you so you can give us an update.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mayor. I'm really honored to be with you and with your team today, with Dr. Tracy and Maritza Bond and Michael, to see you again, etc. And it's always wonderful to see you, Gage. Thank you. But Mayor, I want to just commend you. I mean, there is, what you've done is to really make it a priority to be communicative, transparent, to be visible, attentive. That's what people need to do, and to be focused on, securing and deploying the resources for the city, and to being upfront with folks. It's a very, very difficult time. I don't have to tell anyone that, but people want to know the truth. They want to, it's difficult that sometimes it may be, but let them know, and let them know where you're trying to go, which is enormously helpful. And the city, thank you. With regard to the food issue, what you've talked about, I will just say my hope, Mayor Michael and Dr. all of you, that it's about, in this next package, we've been fighting for all along, is to bring the maximum benefit on food stamps up to, bring it up by 15%, the minimum benefit from $16 to $30, to look at online deliveries, to have the Secretary of Agriculture do nationwide online delivery, so we can help people, youngsters who lost their work-study job, are out of school, how do they access of food. But as you said, a lot of food being distributed, and we know how to do it. We need to be creative in getting the issue on food. It's that at the outset of this, it's been distribution. We have an abundance of food in the United States. How do you get it distributed to people? And now we're looking at how we make sure that our farmers, ranchers, etc., do not have to plow the crops under or dump milk, but let's help them. I wanted to say something on restaurants, because they were mentioned. I just got off a caucus phone call that talked about our going to extend, as restaurants and other small businesses wanted us to do, was to extend the loan deadline in terms of hiring back. And instead of it being 8 weeks, we'll go for 24 weeks. The extension will be from June 31st to December, so that particularly for restaurants, if you need to get your loan forgiven, but you can't open your restaurant and bring people back, well, that doesn't help you any. So that was one of the issues that was addressed. So on the health side, what we again will try to do in this package that I think we will vote on Friday, that is to focus in on the testing piece and the contact tracing piece. We know that that has been a unbelievable problem without any real, if you will, central control of what we can do in getting the tests out, the testing kits out. On the nursing home issue, I'm very pleased to read this morning's paper on what we're talking about. I have been in touch with the Fairhaven clinic with Dr. Lagarde and know of her work. I've been talking to David Hunter at Mary Wade. My hope, and I've talked about this to the governor's office, that we use our community health centers. There's 17 of them in the state of Connecticut, to be helpful in going in and testing patients and staff, so we can move quickly in this area. What we're going to try to do in this next package at the federal level is increase funding, as I said, for testing, increase funding for the Center of Disease Control and Prevention, the National Institutes of Health, the National Strategic Stockpile, and the Biomedical Advanced Research and Development Authority, which is where we're able to deal with the contracting for vaccines. So we will try to plus up all those areas. We want to try to do, as I'm hopeful, and I will know later today, the full extent of, we have wanted to, because parents are at home, either because their child is at home or they may be ill, and family paid sick days and family and medical leave. While we initiated that a while ago, it left out, you know, over 100 million people in the country. So what we're going to try to do is to address that in this next package by allowing people who are ill themselves or who have a loved one who is ill to be able to access family and medical leave, to access paid sick days, to not exempt healthcare workers from family and medical leave, but to try to look at the gaps that still remain in this effort. So that's an area that I'm going to be watching carefully. Notice that Connecticut, in terms of the health side, has only received, I guess, about 30 cases of remdesivir, and so that's the drug, as you know, that has been showing some promise. So we've been in touch with the hospitals in Connecticut. And so we're trying to watch the distribution of that drug and the therapeutics. And what we can't let happen, what we cannot let happen, is that politics comes between what are the needs that the public needs and in terms of treatment. So the accountability, the oversight is critical in this area. I mentioned the nursing homes. I would just say there were two pillars of our community that folks on this call will remember fondly. One was Teresa Argento, really the kind of matriarch in the Italian American community, and we lost Teresa just a few weeks ago, and who was in a nursing home. And most recently, Louise Endel, again, a pillar in our community, someone who really made a difference. And these are heartbreaking stories, and they're everywhere. It's not just Teresa and Louise, it's everywhere. And people who are having to really pass away by themselves, and the heartbreak of their families. So we want to look at how we're able to provide some, I talked to Secretary Azar about how we are looking at how we keep residents and patients safe. And we need consistent guidance. We need uniform guidance for people. They need the supplies, they need the tests. We need to protect the healthcare workers, our workers who are on the front lines with the material that they need. What I will do is, I will just mention to you we're trying to address those who are facing homelessness. We have something called the Emergency Rental Assistance and Rental Market Stability Act, $100 billion for emergency rental assistance program, providing temporary rental and utility payment assistance. Funding is critical, it's crucial to what we're doing and looking at homelessness. So we'll continue to focus our attention on that in terms of the protective equipment. it was really one of the most frustrating conversations that I have had, which was with the director of FEMA, where he said that less than 10% of the equipment is produced in the United States. And yes, they scour the world for it, but only 20% of that goes to FEMA for distribution. The rest goes into a commercial stockpile. And that means that the state of Connecticut, New Haven, others are in a competition with one another for being able to get a hold of what's desperately needed equipment to save people's lives. And so we know what that's been with regard to the equipment for our nurses, our doctors, et cetera, with the masks and the other medical supplies. We have introduced legislation to address this issue, but I don't have to tell you, it takes a while for legislation to get passed. So the hope is that we can get money into the bill to allow for us to be able to deal with distribution. A couple of things that I will be concerned about. By the way, to Dr. Tracy, with the school, we will deal with the Educational Stabilization Fund and education. Not as much money as I hoped in this tranche. So what we're trying for is if we can do maintenance of effort in this regard, so that we don't see the money that we send go elsewhere, to be very honest with you, that there be some way to designate that the money is for education. There'll be a tranche that is for K through 12, and then there will be another piece for higher education in this next proposal. There are two things I'm going to be looking forward to. Is one, as I said, actually three things. One is the extension of paid sick days, family and medical leave. I'm encouraged by what I heard this morning. The second is, and I'll hear about this later this afternoon, as to whether or not we've dealt with the expansion of a child tax credit, so that we include those families that are currently excluded because they make too little money, and a third of the kids who are both African-American children and Latino kids that are left out, to try to expand it to include them, but also to increase the amount of funding to $3,000 to families who have kids that are over 6, $3,600 per child for kids that are under 6. That's what I'm hoping for. Got my fingers crossed when the Ways and Means Committee does its presentation later this afternoon, because all of the data points to this is one of the chief ways in terms of lifting people out of poverty. So really there. And then what I mentioned earlier, we're going to fighting again over and over again on the increase in food stamps and some of the issues that deal with food security. So I've gone on longer than I should have in this context, but I'm happy to answer any questions, but to bring you up to date on where we are in Washington. So thanks so much for letting me be a part of this conversation.
Thank you, Congresswoman DeLauro. Appreciate all the updates. We usually open it up to questions. Is it all right if we take a few questions with you?
Yeah, fine. Let's go.
Great. Let's do this. Looks like Tom Breen's the only reporter we can currently see, and he raised his hand, so go for it, Tom.
Thanks. Thanks very much. And thank you, Congresswoman. That was a lot of very helpful and very interesting information. I do want to start with a question about the politics of all of this. Mitch McConnell and the White House have been pretty clear that they are not interested in rushing into passing another bill. So even if the House does pass this, I think what's called the HEROES Act, it seems like it's a very uphill battle to get those two parties to agree. So why should, in your opinion, why should New Haveners have any confidence that anything that you just listed might actually pass into law, considering the reluctance of the Senate and the White House?
Well, I think the moment is, it's beyond the reluctance of anyone. It is the necessity. And I think, and I listen to, the folks who are on the front line here, the necessity. The necessity is not just New Haven. It's all over the country. And look, 80,000 deaths. We have people, it was difficult enough beforehand to be able to make your way. You couldn't afford a $400 bill for anything. Think of the millions of people who have lost their jobs. What is happening to them? I believe that it is the overwhelming necessity and the momentum that is in the country. Because you take a look, and I have taken a look at data all over the country, what people want us to do. They want government to engage, to help them in their lives at this moment when the circumstances and the challenges are beyond anything that they have anything to do with, and they're trying to cope. What I say to Mitch McConnell is, listen to the people of this country. They are on their knees. They are desperate. And what is our job? What is our moral responsibility? That is to respond, because the federal government is where resources are. And we have that obligation. So it's my hope, because the other packages have been on a bipartisan basis. That's what we have done. And there isn't any reason why we shouldn't move forward on a bipartisan basis to bring the welcome relief to our cities, our states, as you talked about the name of the bill, the heroes, those frontline workers who every single day are risking their lives. I say to Mitch McConnell, you're not risking your life every single day by showing up at a nursing home or at a grocery store or somewhere else, or a nurse or a doc someplace. Oh no. Our job is to pay attention to what the needs of the country are. And that's what I hope will move people to be able to get this passed. And I believe there are well-meaning Democrats and well-meaning Republicans in the United States Senate who want to respond, not to Mitch McConnell, but they want to respond to the people who have put their faith and trust in them to do right by them.
In your introduction of this new proposed legislation a few minutes ago, you went through a few highlights very helpfully. I wonder if maybe in a sentence or two more, you could talk about maybe your assessment of the coronavirus-related relief bills passed by Congress so far, and what has been missing as these programs have kind of played out and been rolled out in real time, and what you think the top priority for this next bill should be. And you touched on that already, but what's your assessment of what's happened and what needs to happen now?
Sure. Look, I would just say, you know, what we did was we started to move. The first package was, I believe, was $8.3 billion. And quite honestly, I'll be frank, the administration was talking about 2.2, but the need was already beginning to build in terms of what we needed. And that package was essentially focused on the health pieces. And that was testing and vaccine development. We had thought, you know, PPE, etc. We then began to see the unfolding of what was happening. And then there was another package in which we tried, the business side of this was critical. Businesses going under. And what we did was we provided then the opportunity, and we thought the best way to get the funding out with regard to our businesses was through the banks. And because it would then, you know, overcome some of the bureaucracy with the SBA or so forth. And so we went, I think, $349 billion. And the EIDL loans, forgivable loans, etc. And what did we find there? That in many instances, particularly the large banks, that they were giving money to their preferred customers, instead of looking at the small mom and pop businesses. In my office, and these are businesses in New Haven, in the greater New Haven area, you know, we had 70, 80 people call saying, I put my application in on April 3rd and I got nothing. I kept being told I was in the queue, and finally they said the money ran out. So understanding the need there, what we did and the consequences, maybe unintended consequences maybe, we went back in. And we did this interim package. And that package says that, okay, let's move through community banks. CDFIs, the minority loaning institutions, credit unions, to address that piece of the puzzle. And because we found a continuing need for testing, we put in $25 billion for the testing to help that capacity. Now, and there will not be PPP. I mentioned some of the changes that will happen with regard to the length of the loans, et cetera, but there isn't going to be further dollars in this piece for PPP. What's now on the agenda? What's now on the agenda, that what we have discovered is that we're looking at frontline workers. We're looking at their needs. And again, we're looking at testing, contact tracing, isolation and treatment, of how we go down that road. Cash. When I talk about cash, I'm talking about direct assistance. We are going to see a continuation of the direct payments. I've talked about the child tax credit, which we will look to expand. We're talking about family and medical leave, ways in which we can provide people with the economic security that they need to move forward. And we're going to address the issue of food security as well. As the pieces unfold themselves, Tom, we try to address them. You can't address everything at one time. There are unintended consequences. There are new circumstances which develop. And I think that the Congress has been nimble in that, moving in that direction. And now on this piece, I think the country will move Mitch McConnell to be nimble and to move with this package.
Thank you very much for that response. And I do have
you.
one more question for you, and also for the mayor and for Director Bond, if that's okay. And that's about this May 20th date that Governor Lamont has set for phase 1 of reopening in Connecticut. I feel like we hear a lot from the state on a regular basis. The state seems to be kind of leading when businesses will be allowed to reopen in this manner. And I would love to hear your take, Congresswoman, and also the mayor. Do you feel like New Haven, do you feel like the 3rd Congressional District is ready?
To answer questions,
do you feel like
first, and then
Connecticut is
I
ready
will.
to reopen by May 20th for this first phase?
You know, in asking that question, I think about, would I go to a restaurant? Would I get my hair cut? Would I go shopping? And I think, you know, I'm not so sure I would. And I know that's something that, you know, there's so many people that are anxious to reopen. They want to move beyond the virus. I think we all do. But in the most important thing for all of us is people's health. And people's health is intricately linked to the success of our economy as well, the long-term success of our economy. And so, you know, I know that there's a lot of pressure to open up. There's been a lot of focus on the May 20th date. My focus is on how we make sure that we're focused on the long run and reducing the number of people that get sick. And I think that's the success to the long-term rebound of the economy as well. So frankly, I'm not quite sure that the May 20th date, given the guidelines that have been set by the governor, is completely realistic. And there's also been a number of hurdles that the state has outlined that we need to cross in order to feel more comfortable with reopening. Reduction in hospitalizations continues on a positive trend, and that's very promising. But our capacity to test on a very, very wide scale, our ability to provide as a state enough PPE for the safety of many of the employees at these different sites, not to mention nursing homes, healthcare workers, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not quite sure we're there. And, you know, we're talking about 8 days away. So I think that, May 20th, there's been a lot of excitement and focus on that individual date. Ultimately, the outline by the state has left it up to businesses that are within the parameters of the reopening to choose whether they feel it's safe, and up to the customers to choose whether they feel it's safe. And I think that it's not that date that's important. It's as time goes on, our overall assessment each day of the risk versus the gain as to how we make these choices. Does that make sense, Tom?
Yes, thank you. I've got a few other questions, but I'm happy to defer for a bit to.
It looks like it's kind of a quiet, unless Michael Bingham has a question. Let's do a couple more, and then we can let the Congresswoman go. But go for it, Tom.
So who will be the private partner helping the city with testing and advanced nursing? Is that one of the community health? You said it's a public-private partnership?
It's the same partnership we have with Day and Chapel Testing Site.
Dr. Murphy.
Dr. Murphy.
And when did you say that testing will take place at Advanced Nursing?
Later this week.
And that's for both staff and residents?
It's just residents at this juncture.
Thank you. And then Mayor, how did getting tested go today for you? I saw an article about it by Maya, but could you tell us a bit about what it was like to get tested at the CVS site? Did it hurt?
It was really easy, and it didn't hurt or feel uncomfortable at all, despite having to stick something up my nose. Unlike all of the other testing sites in New Haven, this site, you only have to stick the swab about an inch into your nose. The other testing sites, the swab goes much further into your nose. I was surprised that I didn't sneeze, and I was surprised that it didn't feel uncomfortable. Obviously, even though I was feeling pretty good, when you're waiting for the results, you start to get a little bit anxious about what they might tell you, and I was relieved that I tested negative. It's important to note that the tests aren't foolproof either. So people that do test negative, sometimes the tests aren't fully accurate. Also, just to note, thanks to Jordan's for letting us use their parking lot for more than a month now, 2 months. They probably are interested in reopening in the near future, and so I'm not sure how that's going to go, but we appreciate they're using their parking lot.
Thank you. Thanks. And then I have one more question for the Congresswoman, and it's a bit of a broad one, but I'm curious to hear your take. And it seems like every day it brings something incredibly new, but today seems particularly remarkable in Washington. We have House Democrats introducing a $3 trillion bill. We have a Supreme Court case live broadcast over whether or not Congress can subpoena the president's tax records as a private individual. And then Dr. Fauci and Robert Redfield testifying about whether it's safe to open. It seems like today was a big day. Could Congresswoman, can you tell us in a minute or two just what it is like to be in Congress at this moment, particularly this day, as so many consequential things seem to be swirling around all at once?
Sure. Well, first of all, one of the most difficult things for me personally is, if people know me, I'm a hugger. Being without the social contact of friends, family, grandkids, etc., is difficult. But every day is a, what I'm dealing with is what we're doing with this CARES package, what we will do with appropriations that are coming up. And at the same time, last week I was very proud to hold the first actually official hearing on Capitol Hill, where we brought in Dr. Frieden and Dr. Rivers, to talk about, because I'll go back to your last question to the mayor, and I associate myself with the mayor's comments on reopening. I think we have to be guided by the science and where that takes us. And in that case, we are have to look at people's comfort level with where they want to be, in terms of, are they going to go to the grocery store? Are they going to go to get their hair cut, et cetera? And we need to take a very, very hard look at that. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge every day. We're trying to communicate in different ways. We're trying to listen to and address the problems of constituents every day. And in the meantime, though, we have to continue on. We are, I'm pushing for us to be able to vote by proxy, for us to hold virtual hearings. We cannot do that yet in the House. We have to vote on that. The Senate was able to do it. We are the government, and people are expecting us to respond, and we need to do that and not be viewed as not being on the field. And we are, all of us are, but I want to make sure that we are, people are visibly watching what is being done and have a sense of what the people who represent them are doing. And some days are more difficult than others.
Every day is an interesting day in Washington, isn't it?
Hear, hear.
I see a question in the comments from Cassandra Basler. I have a question from WSHU Public Radio. Asian American and Pacific Islander advocacy groups have expressed concerns that as states begin to reopen, there will be an uptick in anti-Asian hate-related incidents. About 1,600 incidents have been reported in the US since the start of the pandemic. How is Connecticut or Congress preparing to combat this? Any federal resources available to track incidents and inform communities? Do you want me to take this one first, or do you want to go for it, Congresswoman?
No, you go ahead and let me know what you're doing here, and I'll tell you.
Yeah, I think in New Haven, we have a long history of being a place that welcomes everyone and a long history of tolerance. That doesn't mean that the city of New Haven is perfect and that there aren't occasions where residents will say or do inappropriate things. But I think that one of the most important ways to ensure that we protect from hate-related incidents and acts is to be very strong at the level of the mayor in rejecting that kind of hate and behavior, to put out information that is accurate and based on data and science. And the fact of the matter is this virus does not care what you look like or how much money you have. It'll take you however you come. And we will reject any form of hate and be very proactive about that if there are incidents in New Haven. I don't know if Congresswoman, you have anything to add there.
Well, I would just say that it's the same feeling is true. We cannot go down the road of scapegoating or intolerance or divisiveness. We have enough of that in our country today, and my colleagues are very concerned about that. We have spoken about that. There have been sessions to talk about the incidents and so forth, and addressing them. And no matter what community is being discriminated against, and I'll be frank, it's a question of leadership. It's what you will do. It's what Governor Lamont espouses. People who are in the kinds of public positions that we are in have got to lead the way. Frank with you, I was very troubled when that young woman asked I'm assuming Chinese descent, who asked the question, a fair question yesterday, where she said that, that why are we lagging behind? That's been a common question. Why are we lagging behind in testing in other areas? And the president's response to her, well, why don't you ask China? I mean, do not. I think leaders have a moral obligation to set a tone, and that we are not going to allow discrimination, and that we are not going to deal with intolerance, and that we all need to faithfully be there and to call these incidents out.
Thank you.
Thanks. Can we do one more question? If there is one. Tom, you got one more question or no? You good to go? All right.
I'm good. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you, Dr. Tracy, Mr. Pinto, Director Bond, and Gage for setting this up. We'll see you all soon.
Thank you. Be safe. Take care. God bless you, you and your families. Thanks for letting me be a part of this, Mayor.
All right.
Great team. A great team you have.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See ya.